Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. A few years back, my son designed and created a desk for himself, for his office. When we built it, he built it with the idea of using it for a specific purpose, and now that purpose has changed. It needs to have it about 3 inches shorter. It's 33 1/3 inches tall, and it needs to be 30 inches. So today I'm going to lay it out and cut the legs short. One of the things that I always try and do is use the same rule throughout the process. That way I have much more control over whether the parts all fit. So today I'm going to be using this Evans rule True Lock tape, 25-footer. The desk was designed to be able to be knocked down. So one of the things that I want to do is make sure that I have it 30 inches all the way around. So I'm going to mark this 30 here. And I'm going to mark 30 here. Now this peg is notched to go up inside the frame of the top. So we're going to have to cut a tenon down here in this chunk that is the same size as this one, but end up with the part about 3.5 inches lower. So this surface is going to be down 3.5 inches from there. This is notched in to allow for the 2x4 on the top. It's only 2 3/4 inches long. But I want to start my cut and have this face 3.5 inches below the 30-inch mark. I should end up with this line at 26.5, and this one should come out at 26.5 also. There we go, 26.5. So when I cut this, piece off, I'm going to cut away half of the bottom so that I end up with the same half lap. Now why do I keep going back and checking it with a tape measure? Just to make sure. In keeping with the Old Sneelock tradition, Ryan made this desk out of 2x4s that we had laying around. So they're not all exactly 2x4 or even 1.5 by 3.5. We planed them down flat and then we sanded them after we got them together. So they're all smaller than what they started out with. This 4x4 and this 4x4 were part of a play set that he had when he was a little boy. We recycled it into a desk that he used now that he's a man. Kind of a cool thing to do. Okay, square all the way around. Very good. Another way to lay out the line is to use a marking gauge. I happen to like this method. It's something that I wasn't using before, but now I've discovered it and I find that I like it very well. The method I use is to line up the little point, this right here. In this case, in this old marking gauge that I bought, it's a nail that's been driven through and sharpened. I line up the tip of the nail with the cut that I want to make. I tip the marking gauge slightly towards me and then draw the marking gauge forward. And it makes a very small knife mark. When I saw, the knife mark does two things. Any wood that tries to split past that tends to break off there. It keeps me from splintering. It also doesn't get erased easily by rubbing your finger across it. So it does two things for me. Then holding the guide block up against the face of the wood, I pull the nail, tip the marking gauge slightly towards. I tip the marking gauge slightly towards me and then draw the marking gauge forward. And it makes a very small knife mark. When I saw, the knife mark does two things. Any wood that tries to split past that tends to break off there. It keeps me from splintering. It also doesn't get erased easily by rubbing your finger across it. So it does two things for me. It's a nice sharp marking gauge. Gives me a small line, lets me be more accurate. And it allows me to cut without splintering. Verify the setting, still good. Once again, nice scribe to mark. One of the things you do have to watch with a marking gauge, especially putting a line in with the grain, the knife can get trapped in the grain and try and follow it. So it can tend to push the line off one side or the other. The way this grain is actually set up, it's trying to pull the knife edge this way so it really tightens it into position, which sounds good, but it can knock your gauge out of calibration, so that you end up with a line that's off to one side or the other. So marking gauge is hopping up over that grain, but I got a good straight line. We'll use that. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other set. No need to watch all that though. It's exactly the same process. Now I'm going to put a rag, which in this case is an old sock, in between the two boards so that I can use this part of the desk as a support for this one while I do the cutting. I'm going to cross cut down through the sides of this to take away this waste around the tenon. And I'm going to be using this Diston back saw. It's not an antique unless you figure that it's 50 some years old, but then that makes me an antique too. I need to mark this leg at 26.5 plus 2 3/4. So that's 26.5, 27.5, 28.5, 29.25. That side's the waist side. I want to cut to that side of the line. $29.25. 26.5 to the cutoff line. That post is done. Now flip it over and cut the other leg. Left side's cut. It's all the length. The half lap's cut. The tenon's cut. Everything's ready to go. Now I just have to set up the big side and cut that, and then I'm all done. Couple hours work and both sides are cut down to the size they need to be. All set to move into the new house. Thanks for watching.